A fantastic day to you, Dr. Velva Bowles.
Good afternoon, Dr. Bowles.
Good afternoon. I hope everyone's well.
Thank you. Yeah, we're doing fairly well.
And this is the Wisdom Table coming to you from the James Weldon Johnson houses in Harlem, USA. Actually, East Harlem, USA, otherwise known as El Barrio. The program that you're about to hear, the Wisdom Table, does not reflect the views, attitudes, whims, deeds, or any other proclivities of the management of the community center, nor that of the administration of the housing development, the James Weldon Johnson houses. However, the program does reflect the research done by the participants in the program, live and living color, and once again, by phone, one of our favorite guests, and her name is Dr. Velva Bowles in Louisiana by way of North Carolina, and other points where she has picked up so much information that's intimidating to small brains like Brother Leroy's on this side of the planet. So I asked all the questions. And what we put to Dr. Velva Bowles today, assignment, is her review of the film Harriet, and secondly, why and how folks get ill Thanksgiving night and the day after Thanksgiving. Thank you very much for joining us, sis.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Well, if you want me to just get started, I was invited. I haven't been to theater. I don't go to dark places and sit and look at a screen and not know what's going on behind me very often. But I was invited to go with someone who is a very skeptic. He had heard so many negative promos, and the negatives, in my opinion, were irrelevant. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But I did go and I saw the movie, and it was, to me, a blast from the past on some levels. It was encouraging on many other levels. When we entered the theater, and I was totally silent. Yes, Brother Leroy, I do become speechless. And he was concerned, why was I so quiet? But he didn't understand the emotion that has been evoked in me and the types of very strong memories of things told to me by my grandparents and other elders. And I think I shared briefly with Brother Leroy just how poignant that movie was for me, and here's why. Those who had negative comments were commenting that the producer or the consultant on the movie was a white female. And some rioted saying, oh, why is always our history told to us by someone else? We should boycott the movie. And my report to those were, Black Americans don't hold their history. The history of our coming, if you remember, we were kidnapped. So kidnapped victims don't have a ship passage log. They don't have information about the voyage. So the only people who hold the history of Black Americans are those who kidnapped them, those who held them hostage, those who worked them as slaves. So consequently, the whole comment of there being only a white advisor on the movie, to me, was mute. That's the only person who holds the information. So that was the first thing that I threw out when he and I were talking after the movie. I don't care who the producer is. I don't care who the consultant was. What was important was the following. There was a strong indication of love for family. They showed Harriet was a petite woman. I think if I remember what information is available, she was about 5 foot tall and under 100 pounds. He had come up with a concept as a teenager that she did not want to be enslaved. And there was a legal situation where the previous owner of her mother had said after 40-some years, the mother would no longer be enslaved to the family. But the son of the owner did not honor that. So the beginning of the movie shows some of the oppressiveness that at the whim of someone else, even if someone had entered into an agreement, it was meaningless. If that person who was empowered to be an owner of another human could simply tear up the paper and ignore it. So that was the first point. What do you do when you're powerless? what do you do when you have no other force on your side? And that's how they introduced one of the very early scenes in the movie. They introduced that in a less hostile or painful way, but they clearly let you know that in this setting, this descendant of a slave had no power, no voice. The laws didn't mean anything. So they also depicted that Harriet was married to a man who was free, meaning he had either bought his freedom or some arrangement so that he was considered a citizen now because he was not the property of someone else. And they were able to show how powerless this free black man was. He could marry an enslaved woman, but the agreement was any children they had were slaves because they took on the identity of the female. So if you're aware and you're listening to the very first part of the movie, you are seeing how horrible things were skewed in the favor of the enslaver. And why it really piqued my interest, I'm careful to talk about someone enslaved and not saying they are a slave. And one of the things, in my opinion, Brother Leroy, is we black folk buy into things. If you identify me as a slave, you are relegating me in a category. If, however, I maintain I am a woman, whether enslaved or free, you can't take the woman identity away from us. And even to this day, so many hundred years later, people still say ex-slave, and this was ex. And when I heard them talking about one of our black leaders who was a very large political person after the Civil War, it enrages me. He's not an ex-slave. He is ex-enslaved. You know, it's like calling a convicted person who served his time a convict. You know, it's an ex-offender. No, he is a man. So we need to be careful about our labeling. I am not a descendant of a slave. I'm a descendant of enslaved people. If you don't call a Jewish man a slave when they were captured during the biblical times, you don't refer to them as a slave or an ex-slave. Why do you maintain that for black Americans? At any rate, that's my new thing about language is powerful. But getting back to the movie, with all that powerful list, the white owner did not honor an agreement his father had made. The white owner did not respond to a lawyer's decree. And there was a woman married to a freed man who was afraid to exert any kind of power because of his skin color. He was free, but he was also black. So you look at this very small, diminutive woman, not 100 pounds soaking wet, who in her own determination says, it is not right for one human being to own another. And she said it very early in the show, and then she began to repeat it in several other times, I will be free or I die. And they have a very emotional, in my opinion, shot, still very early in the movie, when she has run for it, and she's all by herself. She doesn't have any protection, doesn't have a gun, and she gets trapped. And the owner's son, who she obviously grew up with, is making an appeal to her. He wants to save face, and he says to her, oh, I'll only keep you in the house. You won't have to do any of the outside work. I will make sure of this and make sure of that. And what is interesting is, in his mind, he's making concessions. That she won't have to be a field Negro. She can now be a house Negro. And he says to her, I know you like me, because also early in the show it talks about her getting a brick or something hit in the forehead, and from the way this movie projects it, she jumped in front of this white young man and caught the brick in the head because she was protecting him from an angry uncle. So it says the malice wasn't intended for her, but in defense of this young man, she was hit in the head, and she wore a scar from that injury. So the white owner, her peer, if you like, is appealing to her saying, I know you like me. And he reminds her of her self-sacrifice in the event of that brick being thrown. And his promise is that she will only be a house Negro. She will not be a field Negro. And I suspect to many of us, if you're weary and you're alone and you're powerless and someone's offering you an out, you would take it. But the moment that every bit of the emotion, and this is still early in the movie, when she climbed up to the edge of the bridge and all the people in the background with the dogs are waiting and the young white man is making his appeal, she said to him, "I be free or I die." And she jumped off the bridge. And the camera allows you to see her falling, and you see the rushing water below. And that was an emotional moment for me because somehow I had identified so strongly with this diminutive character and all these odds against her that her jumping at that moment made her a hero. How brave is that? I don't know if she could swim or couldn't swim. I don't even think she thought about it. What she had in her mind was a conviction. I will be free or I die. And I just took everything I had. And when she turned loose and the white guy grabbed that, and she's falling, I was falling too. And when the show, it looked like she hit that water, my air went out of my lungs because I'm saying, wow, how many of us can have a decision so firm, so clear? She didn't say, okay, well, maybe, or I'm not sure. She was completely sure regardless. And I guess they give you anywhere from 5 to 20 seconds before you know what happened. They show the people with their dogs calling off the hut, and they show the white man looking and they telling him, no, it's no hope. And then sometime after, you see this really waterlogged person starts coughing and vomiting and has pulled herself up on the side of the river, and she's alive. And I thought, wow, she made her decision, so as far as she's concerned, she's free. But the truth is, she wasn't. She was still in bad territory. So it shows how she continued with her courage, how she remembered. She couldn't read, but she memorized something her pastor had told her before she left the master's plantation. So I'm going to pause there and go back. What was lesson number 2? Her father was a free man. Those of you who didn't know that. His name was a Ross. But because he had children with an enslaved woman, Harriet was a slave by their law. Well, before she left, she went to see her father. And her father, knowing the environment of oppression that he was living in, knew that they were going to come and find out, did he help his daughter? Did he know what's happened to her? So he blindfolded himself. And this was the part I didn't get right off, and then it almost made me choke up to cry. He blindfolded himself because when Harriet came to him and was hugging him and saying she loved him, he wanted to be able to tell the white people when they came to question him that he had not seen her. Now, why that impressed me is, look how clever, look how ingenious. The things we had to think so far ahead is like a real intense chess match that you got to see 3, 4, 5 moves ahead before you can do anything. He knew he would be questioned. He knew he could be roughly treated. But he knew if he could legally and truthfully say, I have not seen her, then he would not be treated in that fashion. So the man literally blindfolded himself so that he could have a few minutes with his daughter who came to say goodbye. So that to me again was a lesson. My parents would always say, you got to be smarter than they are. And I used to say, what are you talking about? What do you mean? But that movie showed me. You have to be able to tell the truth to someone who is oppressive with a malintent. But then your humanness says, I want to hold my daughter last time. I want to hear her voice if this is the last time. So he had to figure out how to meet his humanness in the midst of this inhuman environment. So that's a lesson that I took home, that he thought the rest of him so he could tell the truth and not be punished for what should never have been a punishable thing, and yet assuage a need for family and love. So that was very important to me. The third thing is very early in the movie. When the movie opens, it shows this minister preaching from First Colossians, the section that says you got to be happy as a slave and serve your master well. And he is preaching on the steps of the white folk, and they're sitting in the background, and the enslaved people are standing in front of him. And his sermon, honestly, is be a good slave. That's the message. And many people would groan, saying, "Oh, look at here. Look at that Oreo. Look at that sellout. Look at that Uncle Tom," or whatever term they would slang to the preacher. But the bottom line is, it was the minister who knew how to get Harriet safely on the Underground Railroad. And when she went to see her father to say she was running, the father told her, "Go to the minister." She was shocked. She said, "No, Daddy." He said, "Go to the minister and tell him I sent you." So when she went and knocked and she said her dad had sent her, she did not know that this same man who stood in front of his white masters and preached good slaves was the connection to Underground Railroad. So that was another lesson to me. We have to almost be schizophrenic. We got to live these two kind of lives. You're living over here saying what somebody else wants you to hear and acting out on the stage that someone else has set for you. And then in your reality, you're trying to break down that very system it appears you are reinforcing. And people wonder, why do black people have high blood pressure? Why do black people have diabetes? Our very existence in America creates the stress that is our mental and physical illnesses. And I don't say that lightly, because as a physician, I've seen people talking to me about, "Oh, I have to do this on the job, and then I come home and have to do this. I have to do this on this side, and then I got to do this. How do I teach my children to be respectful and honorable, and then I have to go back and they treat me like trash, or they treat me like I don't matter, and my children see that. How do they trust me when I'm being two things at the same time?" No one ever talks about the disruption of a child's face and a parent. I remember questioning my father. He was doing something, and some young white fellow came out and called him, they call him Big E. His name was Emmanuel, but he never gave the respect of his name. "Hey, Big E, I need you to come and get this, this, and that." And I remember I was standing with my dad, and it offended me. How dare you talk to my father like that? Dad didn't say anything, and he did it. And later I questioned him. "Dad, I don't understand." He said, "Well, Bubba, there's someone that's like straw boxes." That was his terminology, straw boxes. I said, "I don't understand." He said, "There's people who you really do have to respect because they are your boss. And then there are people who want to act like your boss, but they really are not." So he, I admire, told me in such a way without talking about prejudice, without talking about hate, without, talking about retaliation. But I, in my young mind, could understand when I saw this young white man saying, "You just a straw box." That was my comfort, that I could label him as insignificant, although his behavior was dominant to my father. So when I saw this preacher living in this adverse environment and doing what was expected of him as a performance for the white slave owners, and then being the very connection to the slave runaway, I understood. So I imagine that young people, I would say 30-something and younger, would have no concept of the need of that duplicity, or that need of what I call that, the plight they have pretend, because you're living in an environment that is hostile. And if you're not smart enough to survive, you don't survive. And that's the difficulty I often have when I'm talking to young people who grew up without understanding the need for that duplicity. If you are powerless and you want to exist, you have to cope. And often the coping mechanism now, if you look at it with bright lights and young minds, it looks like what they call a sellout. So you have to be a very adaptive, strong-minded, clear direction because you are maintaining two lives. And I'm going to tell you, as a black professional, that is a necessary situation. I've been thrown into situations where I don't believe in what they're saying. I find what they're saying harmful. But I know the only way I can help the very ones that they are maligning is for me to get more intimately inside the circle. So you're almost like an undercover. If you are a professional and you're still very aware of your community needs, you're an undercover agent. You have to perform and live and act out what is necessary to be accepted. But then if you're intent to use what you've learned to help those that are oppressed, you got to be able to go back. And that is not an easy thing to do on any level. So those three things I pointed out is what I got within the first 15 minutes of the movie. Now the movie is 1 hour, no, it's 2 hours, get it right, 2 hours and 5 minutes long. So within the first 15 minutes, if you have the right background, you get a very strong understanding of how the black man in America has had to adapt, has had to endure, and yet still survive. So I'm on any questions that far? I'm only 15 minutes into the movie, but that is my emotional self after those first 15 minutes. It triggered, like I said, childhood memories, and actually evoked a kind of pride in me. I'm saying I'm a descendant of somebody like Harriet Tubman. How do I know? Because she survived. Those who may have reacted out of anger, reacted out of justifiable homicide, they didn't survive. So I couldn't be their descendant. So I talk with pride to say, I know I come from good stock. I know I come from diversity and versatility. I know I come from cunning and intuition. I know I come from good strategic planning. You say, where are you getting all that from? Because I'm here. They killed those of us who were strong and angry and fought on the spot. They didn't get to bear children. So that's my first 15 minutes. You want to take a break? You want me to keep going?
Well, we're going around the table. Any questions?
You said black men in America had to adapt, had to survive, and I missed the other. And what was the
Well,
other?
and adapt, survive, and flourish. See, we don't, okay, let me put it this way. Too many of us become hopeless, or we say it doesn't matter what I do. I used to hear when I was little, Mr. Charlie won't let Mr. Charlie. That was just an acronym for white men. They said Mr. Charlie doesn't let us, Mr. Charlie this and that. When you are beaten down, the most difficult thing is to have energy to overcome that inertia. So when you are a surviving black man in America, if you are prosperous, you have to be adapting. You have to. I can remember the whole concept of don't look the white man in the face, and when my brothers, my dad would tell them, don't ever go alone to this place, and if you go, make sure that you don't this and don't that. So I can remember the coaching of my uncles and my dad to my brothers for a certain kind of behavior in the city of Shelby, North Carolina. It's very close to Boiling Springs, which was known for it being the Ku Klux Klan capital of the USA. They had a big billboard advertising it just to show you how blatant in your face it was. And I'm talking 1960s, 1970s. I'm not going all the way back to 1800s. I'm in pretty much within the last 30, 40 years. So when you're in that environment, and I look at my dad, he's 6'4", he's a big guy, he's very intelligent, and he was treated in some areas like a little boy. Go get. So for him to survive and to raise his family with dignity and pride, he had to be able to adapt. He had to be able to do what was necessary to maintain that job that was necessary to feed us. So when we have the young black men who don't know our history, and the knee-jerk reaction is anger and force, that is a guarantee of genocide in the United States. We have no safety net. They have taken civil rights and watered it down by putting the word minority on it. The minority to me is ridiculous. Brown-skinned people are not the minority in this world. But they put the label minority so they can say black people, women, Indians, lesbians, whatever else. They have taken away the authority that was originally bestowed when we fought as civil rights workers. Everybody wants to jump in, and as you know, anyone who cooks, when you make a rich tasting gravy and you add some water in it, or you add too much milk to it, or you add it's no longer delicious gravy. So we have allowed what marks we made in fighting to get, and I had to talk to young men recently, I don't seek justice in the United States. And they said, what are you talking about? I don't seek justice. I seek equity. I seek parity. And they said, well, I don't understand. I said, words are powerful. Justice means consistent with the law of the land. Well, enslavement was the law at one time. Would you call it just that you were enslaved? To the lawmakers, that's justice. Going back to Harriet, if we're going to move past the first 15 minutes, the other admiration I had for this petite woman is everything that the minister told her to look for, the people to ask for, she had to memorize. Because she couldn't write and she couldn't read. So he told her, she had to travel so many miles and there'd be this house and she had to ask for this person. And so this petite young woman, she left the minister. All she had was that information in her head. And I've already taken you to the point where when they captured her, got nearly to capture her, she jumped off the bridge. So keep in mind, she had to memorize everything the preacher told her. She almost drowned. She's being chased with bloodhounds and grown men on horses. And when she wakes up on this base, coughing and vomiting this dirty water, she rouses herself and takes off running. I mean, she's not walking. The movie shows her running because the person I was there with was saying, you tell her which direction she take off running. I said, well, here's another thing you have to understand. Enslaved people could not ride a horse, because they were considered the same as the horse. You don't see a cow riding a horse. You don't see a horse riding a horse. So they were livestock. The livestock didn't have use of other livestock. So when you told somebody where to go and you had been an enslaved person, the only thing you had for transportation were your legs. The same way a dog would take off running. The same way that a cow or a horse. So he was impressed that giving her direction was sufficient for her to start her journey. And I said, well, you're thinking like a modern person. If all you've ever known is I have to walk or run, when you're in a hurry and someone tells you something, you're going to take off running. So I was impressed, and this comes back to the duplicity. She was being chased by men on horses. All she had was her feet to run, and I don't think she had shoes. So as she ran after her ordeal, she comes upon a distance where she can see a house. And when she gets there, she's exhausted. She hasn't eaten. Keep in mind, she didn't pack a lunch. I don't know what she was eating. It took her 8 days or 7 days or something to get there. And when she got it was a blacksmith, and she repeated what the preacher told her, the name of the person and whatever other message he had given. And then she just faints away. So once she awakens and she's revived, that's when she finds out about the Underground Railroad, and the person who she meets is a Quaker, and he tells her what else she has to do. He doesn't take her, he tells her. So after she's revived and he comes to a boundary between, I think, right at the Pennsylvania border, and he told her, do you want me to take you over in a wagon or do you want to walk to freedom? She said, no, I'm going to walk to freedom. But she had traveled from somewhere in Maryland into Philadelphia, which was a common law state, and it was Quaker, and they accepted the escaped enslaved people and helped them get citizenship. So they showed her going in as a three-person, and the movie may have done a little bit of what I call glamorization. They showed 3 black people wearing top hats and she met a person who was black that worked on the other end of the railroad, and she was introduced to a free woman who owned an establishment. She got her first bath with soap and bubblies, and it shows her understanding what freedom could be. But after 1 year, she decided she wanted to go back and get her husband. And she thought, well, he's free anyway. All I need to do is get him a nice dressed up suit. And she had her paperwork now declaring her as free. And she was willing to go back into the bowels of the devil, if you like, to get her husband. And she had to figure out how she would do it, or what she would do if she was ever met with someone who might recognize her or recognize her, the property of somebody, but she'd only been gone a year. So the fourth thing, I guess, was the fourth thing that was interesting to me. When the young white man returned, he told his mother that Harriet had drowned. Oh, I can't miss this. Harriet's name was not Harriet. When she ran off from the plantation, her name was Amarina. But when she came to Philadelphia or to Pennsylvania, the young man at that said, what name do I record? And he said, many people get rid of their slave name and become a free person with a new name. So she took the name Harriet because that was her mother's name. And that was another moment of emotion for me, because there was a time that naming your child based on your ancestors was an important thing. I can remember hearing grandmother talk about when she would see the baby, and this is a kind of a native tradition. I don't know enough about African history to know if it's an African tradition, but in the Native American tradition, the elders handle the child. And when they have seen the child, they will announce who the child is most like. And based on that, they will give that child a tribal name. And by Harriet selecting her mother's name as her freedom name was, in my mind, a respect that her mother was supposed to be free. The paperwork said she was supposed to be free after 40 years. And the white owner didn't honor it. So Harriet, in thinking, what will I call myself, went back and took her mother's name and dropped her own, because now this free woman in Philadelphia was the name that her mother had, and the mother should have been free. See, to me, that's meaningful. Sometimes when we make it, as they say, when you hit your mark, you forget where you came from. And even some of us become embittered and don't want anybody from where we came from to come to where we are. Don't show up. Don't embarrass me. So when Harriet had made it to freedom, her first thing was to take her mother's name. That's just meaningful to me. That says something. That, I made it, I'm here, but I am of my mother. Let me give my mother the honor that she didn't get, although it was intended for her. So we don't teach that anymore. The concept of brother's keeper or family first, that's just words now. It doesn't have true meaning. It's something you say, and now what they say, sister girl, and you can be a stranger, but you're my sister, or brother, or man. I'm saying we've lost the value of that. If I call someone my sister, that means I'll lay my life down. That means if I hear something that's rumored, I shut it down. That sister is like myself. I don't stand back and watch someone do anything to her that I would not allow for me. But that meaning is gone. It's just a slang. It's shake hands and bump and all this stuff. And I'm saying, wow. I come from a big family, and I know how my dad would act disappointed if one of my younger brothers did something in my presence that I did not correct or didn't speak out against. And it was just what it was, that the family has to be respected. Maybe I don't mind that he did A, B, and C, but I knew it was against what the family stood for. Then it's my place to step and say, wait, brother, come here, I got to talk to you. Give me a minute. Because that's not okay. And that's what legacy means to me. But anyway, that was another point when he asked her name, and she dropped her own because they called her Riddy. Riddy was her nickname, or Reedy. And after she had gotten free, she took her mother's name. After the year, when she wanted to go back and get her husband, and she figured out how she'd do it, and she made it there, the communication was another point that we have missed. She started singing. It was a gospel song that she later began to sing Go Down Moses, and they dubbed her Moses. But she sang some song initially that the husband recognized, and he recognized her voice. And he went out looking for this person singing the song, and he was overwhelmed to see her. And he said, but we thought you drowned, and this moment of, reunited. And then he had to tell her that when we thought you had drowned, I got remarried. And I married a free woman. And she is with child. And the moment that Harriet realized, she said, you have given your child to another woman? I mean, it was, that moment of realization. I risked my life to come back and get you. I've lived a year on freedom, but I couldn't be free without you. But you can move on with your life. That realization of, I wasn't so important. He kept saying, but really, you have to understand, they said you drowned. And they give you about 20 seconds of her pain. And then she starts, first she's playing her hands like you want to hit her, then she starts backing up. And the camera allows you to see the human hurt and disappointment. And I'm saying, what that did for me, if you're got any kind of warm blood in your veins, is saying, this is a human being. Look at this. She felt so loyal to her husband, she risked her life coming back. And now to hear that he was able to move on with his life and she could not, was so painful, was so debilitating. Her grief is just palpable. And the camera comes in and the tears are coming in. And I speak because I know Wisdom Table, we got some people in the audience there. Sometimes you hurt so bad the tears come and they just overflow. It's like it comes up and just comes out. Sometimes people are crying, they're rubbing their eyes and they're blinking. But have you ever had that pain where nothing you could do, the tears just come up and come out, and they're trailing down your face, meeting at your jawline and under your chin and dropping down? You're not blinking, you're not sniffling, you're not rubbing your eyes. It's like you're just so full that tear doesn't come up and come out and you will explode. Well, they give you several seconds of realizing all of that in her. And she finally throws down the bag that had the suits in it, and she goes off and does her grieving. And then she has one of her epiphanies. And what she decides it really means is God sent her back under her belief of getting her husband. But the reality to her was to rescue her family. And while she is there, someone comes with the news that the white family is ready to sell off two of the Ross brothers. And keep in mind, Ross is the free man's last name. So the Ross brothers slaves because the mother was a slave. And the white family is under financial dire need, and they're ready to sell off Harriet's older brothers. And she's already come back for the husband, so she switches it up and goes in to get her brothers to freedom before they get sold downriver, because they're in Maryland, and downriver usually meant New Orleans. So I'll pause again, because in that second part, Harriet had made it. She was free. She was wearing dressed-up clothes. She was learning. She was understanding what freedom was. She was treated like a person. And she still wanted to go back and get her husband. So she had this sense of loyalty. And then in the midst of her disappointment and dismay, she didn't just turn around and get on the train and go back to freedom. She saw a circumstance that her brother is about to have a worse hardship than what they had in Maryland, and she simply changed gears and said, I'm bringing them out. And it turned out brothers had a wife, and one of the women had a baby, and there's an older man. So she ended up with 5 or 7 people who decided they wanted to run. And when they started the movement, because they went to the preacher again, preacher did whatever he had to do to get them into the railroad system, when they came to a crossroad with white people on horses and dogs barking, and they came to a river, and the river was high, and there's a woman with a nursing baby and an old man. One of her brothers, being an older brother, wanted to pull a rank. He told her, listen, Renee, this doesn't make any sense. We can't force that river. And she pulled a gun. And she said, I am not Renee. I am Harriet Tubman. And I know the way out. And you will be with me or right here you fall. So he said, Renee, you wouldn't shoot me. And rather than answer him, she turned and started crossing this lake or river or whatever. And what made it very emotional to me, I keep reminding you, she's only 5 feet tall, if she's that tall. And as she's walking in this water at night, she has both hands up over her head. They let you see the water get higher. It gets up to her shoulders. It comes to her chin. And at that point, she says a prayer that, help me here. Let me cross this water and let them follow me. And if she kept walking, we're saying, well, she's walking dry to the water coming up. Just as it gets right near her bottom lip, it starts to go back down, meaning she's now on higher ground. Wow. And she makes it across. And that was sufficient to get those who's ready to follow her brother to come on and cross the river also. So part of it, and that may have been exaggeration, is very reminiscent of the biblical story, the parting of the Red Sea, that the fear that people had that they couldn't escape. Because look at this water, how are we going to cross the water? And of course in the Bible, they split the Red Sea and they walked on dry land. And in Harriet, her height was the challenge, because if she had gotten water up over her nose, the river was just taking her on downstream. But she was able, with the prayer, to cross this water and then have those follow her. So I thought that was an element that's important. So if you have a very strong religious bent, if you believe in divine intervention, this was a moment that they were suggesting that God was on her side. So a lot of lessons. We're now probably within an hour of the movie. I can take a break if there's any other questions.
She was a very strong woman.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could have did that with that water thing. I don't know. I can't swim.
I don't think she could swim either. To think about it, she had already had a near-death experience. This is my point when I said conviction, that you just believe in it so much that you don't have another choice. Sometimes we don't know our strength until it's nobody else but us.
That's right.
If you know all you got is you, and success is just you, something happens. You don't think about death. You don't think about trial. If you're so focused that this is what I got to do, it gets done, and you say, man, how did that happen? I don't know if you've had that circumstance, but I've had a few where you're just so blind to everything else, and when it's all over and you're on the other side, you kind of say, well, how did I ever get through that? Or what on earth gave me the energy, the power, the whatever? So if you believe in divine intervention, if you have the concept of something larger than yourself, that's when you say, I'm grateful.
Yes.
I used to see the old folk in my home church get up and do testimonies. And on testimony, for those of you who don't know about the old Southern tradition, this is a Methodist church now. I'm not talking Pentecostal or Baptist. This old sister, probably one of my great aunties, because the family is related all the way through that church, would get up and start testifying. And she didn't have any music. She wasn't singing. She'd be telling me something. And all of a sudden, people would get happy in that church. And they would start tapping their feet, or somebody would jump up and start jumping up and down. There's a child. I was mesmerized by this energy. And, I didn't understand it. I didn't know why, if Ruby was up there telling them how, her foot was hurt and it was cut and it wasn't healing and it started to smell and she didn't want to lose her foot. And she would be up at night in rocking pain. That's what you say. It hurt so bad you couldn't do it but rock your body. And she said, I had the rocking pain. This little child, I'm imagining. And that she couldn't call out to nobody because she took care of everybody. And she couldn't think of any kind of help. She couldn't think of an office. She couldn't think of a poultice. She couldn't think of a hot water. And it was in a rocking pain. And she called out and she said, oh, Lord, merciful Jesus, give me some relief. And she would tell her story, and she'd be crying, and she'd be up there, she stamped that foot, that pain is gone, she stamped that foot, my foot is healed. And people would start, hallelujah. And I'm just sitting there saying, wow, I don't know what it is, but I want some of that. I gotta figure out, what did Aunt Ruby do? What was it that she said? So we don't get that demonstration of
No, we
faith.
don't. I like that. That was a.
And I think we miss a lot. You know, we're everything's solved in 30 minutes. You look at TV, someone gets shot, someone gets arrested, someone gets charged, and the story goes on. No, our whole outlook is it can be fixed real fast. And if it's not fixed real fast, you must hate me, or you're not my friend, or you didn't do all you can do. So we're this microwave generation. And we don't even understand. I can remember, I'm glad I'm talking to my wisdom table. Maxwell House Coffee had a commercial where they showed the pot start to percolate. You guys remember that? And you're watching your coffee and you smell the coffee, and as it percolates, it makes that little chop, give that little sound, and then they finally poured a cup of coffee. Today we gotta have a K-cup, and we gotta have our coffee inside of 90 seconds. So there was something good about smelling the Maxwell House coffee and watching that pot start singing and giving us some music. There's a value to having to wait for what you want. Anticipation can add to your joy. If you get everything you want whenever you want, you become bored, or you get to a point saying, well, what's the use? Now, I've talked to some friends who got too much money. The reason I say too much money, they don't even, they have, if you've ever seen the TV program Living Large, where they show these celebrities got a whole room and 2,000 pairs of tennis shoes.
Right.
It would take them 3 years to wear a pair of shoes. You know,
Right.
you can change shoes every day for 3 years. I'm saying that's too much money, and you don't know what to do with it. And part of it, and I'm gonna say it, and someone probably would come back at me. Unfortunately, in Black America, that's one of our downfalls. We don't know enough what to do when we have a windfall. I go through some of these neighborhoods, and the house got the roof caved in, or there's big holes in their front yard, and they got a car parked there, and they got what they call spinners. Spinners, for those of you who don't know, is this useless 6 or 8 inches that projects out from your hubcap. And when you drive, it spins. Has no use whatsoever. I've asked young men, what does it do? Does it detect the curve? He said, nope, it's just for look. Spinners, 4 spinners on a car is $6,000.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I told her, all you're doing is marketing yourself. You drive down the road with spinners and you don't have a job. You're living with your grandmother in the basement or in a back room. The police is going to say that's suspicious, and guess what? It's true.
Wow.
You can't see that profile. You profiled yourself. You put $6,000 on the outside of your car, and the car is not worth $6,000.
Wow. Wow.
So, you know, part of it has to do with not understanding the value of, I call it quality of life, QOL. The quality of life is not living like Queen Elizabeth. I wouldn't want to have crowns in a building with, 500 rooms. That's not a quality of life I aspire. I am rich once I have met what is my value of quality of life. And we got it twisted. We want to have what someone else has, and we call that moving up. I've had colleagues and friends right at the turn of 2008 when they went through the foreclosures and whatever. They were living in these huge houses, and they were driving. Both of them had to have a BMW or a Mercedes, and they weren't making that kind of money. And when the market turned and the mortgage ballooned, the reality hit, and they had to drop down. We live other people's dreams. And we think that's what having made it means. And I'm often saying quality of life. I went through an interaction with a lawyer recently because I was talking about setting up a trust, and I've never done that before. And I heard a lot of people talk about it. And what shocked me, I shared this with my sister, the line of questioning in the design phase of the trust surprised me. the questions that he was asking is, what maintains your quality of life? I was like, what do you mean? He said, if you could not groom yourself, what is necessary for you to feel like you are alive and you are cared for? Now, I'm going to tell you, Wisdom Table, I do ADLs, which is activity of daily living, for people when you bring them in the hospital, you work with nursing homes, but I have never done an ADL for myself. When he asked me, it felt invasive. Because I do stuff for myself. You know, what do you mean? But then I had to relax and say, no one has ever come and said, Belva, what do you need on a daily basis that would give you the quality of life if you couldn't do it for yourself? So I'm inviting all of you to do that, because after I realized, wow, I never thought about this. I would hope that, you know, many people hope that their children will know, or they hope that their significant other will know, that they don't have to say this outright. But here's a stranger writing it down, because if I want to set up a trust, if anyone has to care for me, they need to know how to maintain my quality of life. And when I was telling my sister, suddenly it came to me, he wants to know your values. He wants to know, you know, if I say, I want to have my hair refreshed every day, I want it to be natural, I want it braided, I want it colored, I don't want to be sitting there with white hair with a brown face, or I don't want it colored because I don't want chemicals in my scalp. That was important. And suddenly I'm thinking, I am telling this stranger what my basic needs are, and I've never really thought about it myself. And many times women, I'll speak to my women in my audience, we hope that somebody is watching. You know, if you ask me about my mom, I could say her favorite lotion was Jergens lotion. And she enjoyed putting it on her hands and up her arm and on her feet. And I loved that she liked the smell. If you ever had Jergens lotion, I don't even know the name of the fragrance, but it's a unique smell.
Almond.
She used
Almond. So almond smell.
Right, and I can say some of my women are going to know, because that was her lotion. Don't bring her anything else. You bring her oil of Olay, you bring her Vaseline, whatever. She look at you and smile, but that's going to be re-gifted. Because my mother wanted Jergens lotion. She used a Camay soap on her face. Camay has a distinctive bouquet, at least it did when I was a child. It had a nice fragrance, and it lasted really thick. Some of you remember Camay. So if you ask me about my mother's quality of life and what she needed, I was aware. I was a little girl watching mommy. I have no children. And so when I was relaying to this fellow who was writing it down and establishing that part of the paperwork, it dawned on me, how many of us ever pause and literally say, what is it I require to maintain a quality of life? I go to nursing homes and I see these people sliding out of a wheelchair, head let down, drooling, or they're staring off like, you know, into a never, never land. And I'm saying, they're alive, but that's not much quality of life. Robin Williams did a movie called Awakening, where he was this young doctor and he came in and discovered something that the people could get up. And one of the men who was most angry and grouchy, when he got this awakening, he loved to dance. And so he was sitting there in the nursing home, and part of his misery is he wasn't able to dance. So when I was answering these questions, I'm thinking about that movie, that one of the things that made his life, the old man's life, better is let him hear dance music. Maybe let him listen to big band music. Maybe bring in some young people and inquire about dancing. Or let him go to a dance recital. And while I was being asked these questions, I was saying, those are all doable. Maybe he couldn't stand up and dance, but he might enjoy hearing the music and watching young people move and maybe having a conversation with young dancers. That would have improved his quality of life. So what I'm saying is, there Harriet was introduced to a quality of life that she maybe never even dreamed of. She met a free woman that owned a boarding house, and this free woman put her in a tub and had soapy water and was combing her hair. And I'm sure Harriet could have never imagined that this would be something like that. So my comment when I look at the movie and bring it back to reality, we have too much as young people now. I've heard a young lady say, what is your Christmas list? She said, I want a bicycle, and I want a DVD player, and I want an iPhone 7. I'm looking at her like, she just racked up, what, $5,000? I was just a 12-year-old, so like she can just request $5,000 worth of stuff and call it Christmas. What is wrong with that? And we give it to them. I have talked to some of my mentees, young women, they're usually single mothers, and unfortunately in Louisiana there's a number of women who think that they can be mama and daddy too, and I've told you about that. And since Louisiana is one of the highest incarcerating states, most of these black men are in prison. Whenever her children started about age 4, she has 2 children, had a birthday, she would just break her bank. She would buy these jumpers, you know, they blow it up, and the kids can get in there and jump up and down, and you can buy one, you blow it up, and it's a water slide. Those things were $250 for a weekend. She'd be dropping $500 for this entertainment of a 4-year-old. And I'm saying, I don't understand. That's what we do in the neighborhood. I say, but you don't have that $500 to blow. Well, he gave me a good deal. He said I could have both of them for $350. I'm thinking it's a piece of plastic that you blow up. This is $350. It should be $35 or less. It just blew me away that the concept of what is normed, what is expected, that even when you don't have the money, you want to hold the image. I see women buying designer bags and don't have the cost of the bag worth of money in there, and they're in the bag. You walk around with a $250 bag and all you have is 50 cents. And they're the first to call you out. Oh, that's a knockoff. Oh, that's a knockoff. I'm like, okay, so you got the real thing at the what, $600 bag? Okay, can you give me a loan? You got $50? I ain't got $50. That's 50 cents. But this is what I'm saying, displaced understanding of quality of life. And I brought it up to say, despite Harriet's exposure to the good things, because she had, and everybody's opinion says she had arrived. She had a job in a hotel. She was getting paid to be a maid. She had had a bubble bath, slept in a soft bed. And where did her mind turn? I need to go back and get my husband. I want to have a regular life. So when she saw the quality of life, she wanted to share it with somebody. She wanted to have love for somebody.